So today I'll be diving into a topic that many of us are affected by even when we don't realize it. You know, all those very sneaky financial habits that keeps our wallets drained and keeps us wondering where all our savings, our investment, our income went to. So the worst part is that this even affects the high income earners, which means that it can affect just about anybody if you don't curb the habits early. So in today's video, I'm going to be uncovering 10 common financial habits that could be keeping you broke or preventing you from attaining financial independence or retiring early. Most importantly, I'm going to be showing you how to break free from all of those financial habits and set yourself up for financial independence. So sit tight and let's get on this journey together. So the first financial habit I'm going to be talking about is when you don't plan effectively and when you don't set up a budget. So if you're serious about building wealth, you would have to set a goal of what you want to achieve. Now, what those goals help you to do is establish a clear purpose that keeps you committed towards achieving those activities. Some financial goals could include setting a plan to attain a certain savings target or even working towards paying down your debt towards a certain amount. So once all of your goals are clearly established, you need a tool to help you work towards achieving all of those goals. Now that's where the budget comes in. Now the budget shows you all of your inflow and your outflow and helps you determine how well or your progress towards achieving those objectives. So with the budget, you can easily allocate your funds into different categories. Now I usually categorize into needs, wants, savings and investment. For instance, you could have a 50% going to your needs and then a 30% going to your wants, and of course the remaining 20% going to your savings and investment on a monthly basis. So when you actively budget, it keeps you disciplined and prevents you from falling into negative spending habits. So the second poor financial habit that I've seen also is lack of adequate financial education. So I know very well that if you don't take your time to learn about finances, how to invest, your savings, or your approach or techniques, there's a high likelihood you're going to make costly financial mistakes that might actually prevent you from retiring early or saving for the long term. So some of the common financial mistakes I've seen a lot of people make is purchasing homes that are highly unaffordable or super expensive for them, maybe lack of savings and investment, amassing high level debt, and so much more. So you can actually equip yourself with financial knowledge by actually reading courses, attending classes, or even reading any materials online or books, or even attending seminars or webinars. So I've dropped a number of links regarding personal finance books that you'll find very helpful in the bio of this video, so feel free to check them out. So the third habit, which is very important for you to take note of, is when you live beyond your means and affordability. So this is simply when you spend more than you earn or what you can afford. And this can be caused by several factors such as societal pressures, peer pressures, lack of financial self-control, buy now or pay later schemes, easy access to borrowed funds such as credit cards, lines of credit, and so on without the adequate discipline to match it. Now, when you opt in for any of these debts and you don't remind yourself that these funds are actually borrowed funds and are not your own cash, which means you cannot afford it at that point, there's a high likelihood that your debt profile will continue to accumulate and it becomes a financial burden for you to pay off. I'll give a very typical example of one common area that puts people into high debt pressure, and that's simply the mortgage. So if you notice that your mortgage payment accounts for more than 60% of your income, then you might have to consider several alternative options. For instance, you might consider renting out a room in your home to other people just to make extra income to offset the cost of the mortgage. You might also consider renegotiating your interest rates with your lender, and in very extreme cases, you might want to consider downsizing if the need arises. So the major solution to this financial habit is to spend less than you earn and save, of course, the balance or the difference between both ends. Keep the gap far from each other. So the fourth financial habit which I've seen that impacts people's ability to be financially independent is when they don't invest and save on a periodic or consistent basis. Now, it's no news that when you don't invest consistently, you miss out on opportunity to grow your investment through the power of compounding interest. Now, just to ensure you do this on a consistent basis and you don't miss a particular month or paycheck, which is also something I do, is to set up an automated deduction from your checking account into a special savings account or an investment account or even a brokerage account for your investment needs. So you need to ensure that this deduction occurs on a paycheck by paycheck basis. That's for every paycheck you get, that deduction happens automatically without your own intervention. One thing I want to clearly establish is that if you do not invest, you cannot attain wealth. the chances of attaining wealth is highly low if you do not invest. So try and do that today if you're not already. So the fifth financial habit that is detrimental to your financial independence is when you pay only the minimum sum to any debt facility you have, which results in amassing long-term liabilities. In North America, for instance, it has become a norm for people to amass high-level debt and pay those amounts over time. For instance, according to Equifax and the US Federal Reserves, household debt had attained a whopping $2.4 billion in Canada and $17.06 trillion in the United States respectively. So if you only pay the minimum required sum into your credit card or any debt you have, there's a high likelihood that the balance is going to grow and become insurmountable over time. And that's because the way debts are designed is such that every balance that is outstanding at the end of the month would always accrue interest, and it compounds over time, making it even larger than the initial amount borrowed. So as long as that balance is there and remains, it's going to be very hard for you to attain financial independence, which is why I recommend that before you start investing significantly, try as much as possible to pay your high interest debt first. For instance, your credit card debt, pay them off, and then move on to your investment. So my recommendation basically under this is for you to make it a habit to always pay into your principal as much as you can, especially for high interest debts like credit cards, personal loans, payday loans, and so much more. Now, when you do this, it's going to free up money which you can use for investment subsequently. So if you're looking to get out of any debt burden, just follow these simple steps. Number one, list out all the debts you have, their required payment, the due date, and the related interest rate associated with those debts. Number two, you want to establish a plan on how you want to pay them faster. So the third thing you want to also do is review your budget and identify if there are any savings anywhere that you can actually channel towards paying down this debt, and it can help you reduce your debt even faster. So the first step for you to do is to select your debt repayment approach, whether it's snowball or avalanche method, and I've tagged a video here that shows how you could do that easily. So the last step for you to do is to continuously monitor how well you are working towards achieving your objective of paying down the debt balance. It would also determine if you have to increase the amount you're paying or to reduce the amount, as the case may be. So the sixth financial habit which I think can keep one broke is bad spending habits. So when you spend a lot of money on things that are avoidable, what I call discretionary expenditure, then there's a likelihood that you are overspending.
Stop buying rubbish.
So when you overspend on less important things or avoidable costs or something I call discretionary expenditures, then there's a likelihood that you have a bad spending habit. So bad spending habits can come in form of impulse spending on things like online shopping, which is very common today, or any other store purchase. So the best way to tackle bad spending habits is, number one, ensure you have a list of things you want to buy, stick to it and be disciplined about your spending, and try not to go beyond that limit. The other thing you also need to consider is when you identify a non-essential thing which is not on that initial list, you need to write them down in a paper, give it some 24 hours to maybe some 3 days to determine if you still want to buy it. I assure you, by the time you think through it over the third day, there's a likelihood that you may not consider buying it anymore. A very great hack. So the seventh financial habit that could keep you broke is when you are too risk averse or too risk aggressive. Now I'm going to explain these two sides of the continuum to help you understand better. So you can be termed too risk aggressive when you take a lot of miscalculated risk and don't assess how well or whether it's worthwhile for you. Now, doing this kind of thing can lead to a lot of loss of funds for you. A very simple example is when you embark on a business venture where you don't perform adequate financial analysis to know if the income that will be generated from that business would far outweigh the expenditures or the cost you're going to be incurring in that business. Now, when you don't do this, you're exposed to a risk of high loss of funds as a result of your risk aggressiveness. So I completely understand that saying, the higher the risk, the higher the returns. However, whenever you embark on any initiative, you need to ensure that your risks are well calculated. So on the other end of the continuum is when you are risk averse. Now, a risk averse person is someone that is not willing to take risk or is scared about taking certain kinds of risk. So if you're one person that avoids risk a lot, you're likely going to be missing out on growth opportunity in your investment portfolio, and this might likely slow down your ability to grow wealth or build wealth over time. So the 8 financial habits that could actually keep you broke is when you don't have emergency funds. So if you don't set out cash reserve to cover up for unexpected expenses, then there's a likelihood that any surprises or unplanned expenses can throw you off balance and make you resort to debts. So I'll typically recommend that you set out a sum of about 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses and put it in a high interest savings account just to protect you against the possibilities of unplanned expenses that might rise in the future. A simple example is if you incur on a monthly basis, say about $2,000 in expenses, then I recommend you save about $6,000 to about $12,000 in a high interest savings account just strictly for your emergency funds. So the beauty about emergency funds is that you don't necessarily have to save all of them at once. You can actually spread it out and save over a period of time. So if you think emergency funds is not important to you, I can assure you that when you have unplanned expenses, there's a likelihood they're going to be dipping your hands into your investment, maybe liquidating your investment. In fact, you might even liquidate your retirement savings fund in a bid to meet up, or even go for debt facility just to meet up with all of those unplanned expenses. So emergency funds helps to prevent you from doing all of those things, thereby securing your long-term investments. So the ninth financial habit, which is a major mistake, is when people delay their savings or investment until after they have made all spendings from their paycheck. So one very common mistake I've seen a lot of people make is when they deposit their savings or investment sum at the end of the month after all their financial expenditures, their needs and their wants have been addressed. Now let me tell you the implication of doing this. Now when you save at the end of the month, there is a likelihood that number one, you will not be saving consistently. Number two, the amount that you're actually saving would vary over time. Number three is that you just be saving only the leftovers from your paycheck for the month. And in some very rare or extreme cases, you may end up not saving at all if your needs and wants exceed your paycheck. So my very common rule of thumb in this area is what I call pay yourself first. So the concept of paying yourself first is simply setting out an established percentage or a portion of your paycheck which you must deduct immediately the paycheck is received into or deposited into your account. Now once this money goes into your savings account or your investment account, of course it reduces the chances that you're going to spend the money, because those accounts typically have some sort of restrictions around how many times you can withdraw from those funds, and this also helps you to keep your funds there and help you save even better. Alternatively, you can also consider using budgeting apps, which I've talked about in this video, which I've tagged here. You can go there to watch to see how you can use your budgeting apps and the kind of budgeting apps I typically recommend if you want to effectively save or invest. So the 10th financial habit is what I call using of cash advances a whole lot of times. So cash advances includes things like overdraft protection, early payday loans, buy now pay later schemes, and even withdrawing cash from your credit cards. So the major disadvantage of cash advances is that it makes you spend money that you don't already own, thereby creating a sort of burden when you want to repay those funds. So the other reason why cash advances can be a big disadvantage is that it comes with its fees and high interest payments, which could also increase or amass your debt burden over time. So my typical recommendation to tackle this issue is to set up a sinking fund account where you can save towards a targeted objective over time, and that way you would actually use your cash that you have earned, and then you don't have to borrow from anyone that would amass interest down the line. So guys, I decided to give you a bonus financial habit which you need to take note of, and that's simply when you don't pay attention to the interest rates of your savings accounts. So if you're that person that saves funds in your traditional bank accounts that pays you about 0.1% or even lesser as interest, then you are definitely losing money on the table. So from my interactions with a number of people, I actually realized that many people don't know the interest they are earning on their savings accounts. Now ask yourself, do I know the interest I'm earning on all my savings accounts? So if your answer to that is a big no, then there's a likelihood that you're missing out on opportunities to earn income or increased interest on your savings accounts. So if you're this person, I would recommend that you actually go and analyze the interest rate you're getting on your current accounts, and then check out for high interest or high yield savings account that you can move your funds into so that you can get the best of returns on your savings. And by the way, I would recommend that you don't keep idle funds in your account unless it's your savings account, or rather make your money work for you by investing all of those funds in some investment products. Okay, thanks for taking the time to listen to me, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'll do my best to address all your questions. And of course, feel free to like, share this video, and subscribe to this channel. And I'll see you at the next video. Bye.